Alright, so this whole 100 men versus a silverback gorilla debate, that's a joke, right? It ain't even close. The human stomped the gorilla. But this made me wonder, out of all the scary and dangerous animals that could turn any human into a highlight reel, what about the polar bear? You know, this bear, the one that has a straight up flee on sight notice because there's simply nothing you can really do to stop it on foot. So, how would the largest land carnivore fare against 100 unarmed men in a fight? Would the polar bear's sheer ruthlessness perhaps give it the win? Or would the 100 men once again turn this fight into an absolute slaughter? Well, if you want the answer to that, you clicked on the right video because today I will be analyzing who would win in a fight between 100 men and a polar bear. Oh, by the way, it gets pretty interesting, and the winner really might not be who you'd expect. So you gotta stick around to hear that. But before we begin, I would really appreciate it if y'all subscribe to my channel, like this video, and commented what y'all think. I truly want to know y'all's opinions on this topic. But enough of the self-promo. I'm curious, and I bet y'all are too. How would this fight even play out? What are the ground rules? Well, there are two scenarios we are going to be talking about, okay? First is 100 humans straight up jump the polar bear. The second scenario is where the polar bear runs a human gauntlet, where each human stands in line and 1v1s the polar bear. Once a human is out, the next one comes in. Simple enough? Oh yeah, one other thing by the way, everyone here, including the polar bear, is bloodlusted and wants to fight. So no claiming that a human could scare away a polar bear, or that a human would straight up curl in a ball and beg for mercy. No, they are fighting and they are angry at one another. And where shall this battle take place? Well, let's just say this takes place in an open field, so pretty much even terrain here, alright? Sounds good? Okay, let's break down what exactly is standing across the battlefield from our 100 angry humans. The polar bear. It's the apex of the Arctic. And it's not just the biggest bear, but it's the largest land carnivore on the planet. This thing has a certain Thanos aura to it. In fact, it's so ruthless that if you find yourself face to face with one, it's often better to straight up run away than to fight back or play dead, because there's simply really nothing you can do on foot to stop it. Just for instance, polar bears have been known to straight up drag beluga whales out of water like it's hauling groceries, and contend with 3,000-pound walruses whose tusks can impale cars. Oh yeah, and good luck to the first few humans, by the way. The calculated kinetic energy of a polar bear slamming into you at full speed has the same energy as a 50 caliber bullet hitting you, or a small car ramming into you at 20 miles an hour. Yeah, no human is bracing for that. But just how large is the polar bear? What are we working with? Well, the average adult male tips the scales anywhere between 900 to 1,200 pounds. Yeah, that's half a ton of muscle, fat, and Arctic grade annihilation. And sure, size is one thing, but what theoretically make it such a nightmare for the humans to deal with is how quickly the polar bear would straight up send a human to the afterlife. Their claws are curved, sharp, and can grow up to 2 inches long. It's specifically designed to slice through flesh like a hot knife through butter. But remember, it's attached to a 1 foot wide paw that could literally palm your face like a basketball. Essentially, getting hit by the bear would feel like a sledgehammer with knives slamming into you. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. The polar bear has an insanely strong bite that can crunch through any human's muscles and ligaments with ease. And here's the real kicker that makes the polar bear even more of a menace in close combat. It's sheer durability. We're talking dense, coarse fur, a thick layer of fat that's 2 to 4 inches deep under the skin, and strong bones built like rebar. In fact, their fur and fat armor combo is so ridiculous that even wildlife officers will recommend not engaging in a charging polar bear if you have a handgun, because simply the bullets will fail to penetrate deep enough to where it matters. Translation: any blunt force a human can dish out, whether it's punches, kicks, or even a stick a human picks up off the ground, yeah, it ain't harming the bear. At least, not right away. Polar bears are not invincible. Large carnivores like bears, tigers, lions, they're still made out of flesh and blood. Remember, polar bears still have joints that can be manipulated or dislocated, bones that can snap, and a brain that, while well protected, is still soft tissue that can rattle around its skull. So even though it would be insanely hard to injure the bear, it's not impossible. And remember, muscles fatigue. There is a biological time limit before the bear's tank runs empty, but I personally don't don't think the polar bear would make the humans achieve that so easily. Okay, so perhaps the most terrifying part of the polar bear is not what it's packing, it's how it fights. This isn't some wild swinging brute like a gorilla throwing random strikes. No, polar bears are methodical, calculated carnivores that know where to strike and how to end a fight. Their goal, especially in this scenario where it's facing down 100 humans, is to disable their target fast, whether by snapping the neck, crushing the skull, or just straight up ragdolling their opponent like a chew toy. Polar bears are expert grapplers and are the brawling type of animal. They will attack wherever they want and just want to make you hurt. So what does all the information I present to you mean? Well, you better pray that you aren't within the first dozen humans it sees. You should hope that you stand somewhere far back in line, perhaps with the whole UFC lineup standing in front of you, because to put simply, we all know the first few humans are getting turned into a highlight reel. But enough of hyping up the polar bear. Let's talk about the human team for a second. What exactly are we working with here? Well, to keep things fair, we're not assuming 100 UFC champions. We're going to be referring to 100 average men in their primes, each within relatively decent shape. Picture someone like Paul Rudd, you know, around 5'10" and 170 pounds. Respectable, right? Athletic enough to throw a punch, not super fragile, but definitely not professional fighter level. Because yeah, if this squad was stacked with people like John Jones, this whole fight would look a lot different. Now here's what people often forget. Humans can absolutely hurt animals if they want to. We aren't complete fodder as many believe. And given that we are taking the whole fear factor out of both the human and bear, things get rather interesting. Essentially, humans can attack in multiple different ways and do things bears can't really do, such as kicking, choking, grabbing onto a limb to twist/dislocate it, and so on. In essence, humans have a way of controlling fights to manipulate the interactions in our favor. Basically, we can bait animals into doing certain movements, knowing that it's all part of the plan to take it down. For example, think of how we can bait an animal, like a dog, to bite onto one part of the limb on purpose, knowing that we have our other hand and legs free to attack it. In fact, we can actually see this strategy being implemented against lions in the wild. Now, I'm obviously not going to show this on screen due to graphic content, but essentially when local Maasai warriors need to take out a lion, one fighter wraps his arms in a cloth, baits the lion to bite it, and while the cat is locked on, the rest of the squad attacks from the sides. Now, I'm not equating a lion to a polar bear because they are simply different creatures, and this is a different scenario, but the whole strategic mindset of humans can still be shown here, and it doesn't take a genius to really strategize. Humans exploit openings and coordinate attacks. Oh yeah, and one other perk of our intelligence. We know where to target. If we see a polar bear limping, you bet even the average guy with survival instincts will start to gang up on that weak spot. In short, we swarm, we adapt, we hunt for vulnerabilities. So no, we're not stepping into this like hopeless little animals. We're bringing brains to the battlefield. But here's the question we have to ask. Does brain power alone give unarmed humans a real shot against a polar bear? Remember, we're talking no weapons, no armor, just 100 dudes squaring up against the largest land carnivore. So, how would the fight actually play out? Well, let's dive into the first scenario, okay? Which is all 100 humans rushing in at the bear at once. Look, let's be honest here. There's going to be a lot of casualties early on. The polar bear is essentially a 1,000-pound wrecking ball with teeth and claws that can pretty much rip through your flesh like wet paper. His first few swipes and bites are going to mow through the unlucky few that stand too close. But there's one thing to keep in mind. Space is limited. You can't just throw 100 guys at the bear and expect them all to land hits. If we're dealing with the average man, you know, about 5'10" tall, 170 pounds, with roughly an 18-foot shoulder width and accounting for a little breathing room to move around, you're realistically looking at 3 men on each side of the bear and one brave soul standing in front getting taken out. That's 7 men engaged at a time. Well, more like 6 because the guy in front is getting absolutely dismantled. Before y'all say, I can already hear it. Well, can we just jump on the back? Now let's get real. That's not happening within the first opening minutes. The bear is going to be constantly spinning, swiping, charging, and just moving around. No one's really hopping onto the back cleanly unless it's already gassed out. And that brings us to the big game changer, exhaustion. It happens to the best of us. So how long would it really take for the polar bear to finish off the 100 men? Well, think about it, okay? Even apex carnivores have cardio limits. A heart is still a heart no matter how big the animal is. Sure, polar bears have decent stamina, but they're not marathon runners. And let's not forget, their thick fat and fur is perfect for the Arctic cold, but that can cause them to actually overheat in a prolonged brawl. On top of that, muscles fatigue, claws get chipped, brains rattle, and reaction time slows down. But let's be generous to the bear here. Say it manages to take out one person every 10 seconds. In order to take out 100 men, it would take just over 16.5 minutes of non-stop, full-throttle combat. But realistically, cumulative fatigue is real. No way the polar bear is knocking out someone cleanly every 10 seconds after the first about 5 minutes. Yeah, their pace slows, the bear breathes harder, and mistakes start to creep in. With every swing, charge, and bite, the bear is burning energy and heating up. So the real question is, can the men outlast the bear's stamina and capitalize once it starts to fade? That's where things start to tilt. The constant beating of the limbs, stomping of its paws, and head hits all add up. Remember, polar bears are still made out of flesh and blood, and bones can be broken and joints can be dislocated, especially when constantly getting hit over and over again. So in all honesty, there's gonna be a lot of carnage within the first 3 to 5 minutes, which might result in 25 to 30 casualties and a lot injured, but after that, the numbers just simply get to the bear, and the humans once again swarming at it would take the win. But listen up, how about the second scenario? A relay style fight. One human goes for a 1v1 with the bear, and when he falls, the next man steps in. Rinse and repeat. So could the polar bear beat the 100 men this way? Well, this is where things actually get pretty close. Here's the thing. I know I'm gonna constantly use the stamina defense here, but it's actually a legitimate concern. Sure, no human is winning a clean 1v1 against a polar bear, but remember, the bear's health and stamina doesn't reset like a video game after each round. Every bruise, scrape, and strain carries over. Those hits start to stack up fast. This is where the human fighting IQ shines. As the bear starts limping or slowing down, the fresh fighters coming in will spot the weakness and exploit it. You know, they will target the bad leg, try their best to avoid the claws, and keep distance to make sure the bear expends as much energy as possible. After all, it doesn't take a genius to see when an animal is hurt or when it's exhausted. Let's be generous again, okay? If somehow the bear manages to avoid a serious fatigue, maybe it bulldozes through 100 men in the same 16.5 minute window, but that's not reality. However, listen, the polar bear does not need to worry about the stress of getting surrounded. It just needs to focus its attention at one human at a time, which honestly makes it much easier for the bear here, and that buys efficiency and less immediate wear and tear on the body. I could maybe realistically see it lasting between 7 to 8 minutes before the cardio and accumulated damage start to catch up pretty hard. Maybe 10 minutes if the bear is extra lucky, but yeah, that's a good 40 to 60 people at least. And sure, it's hard for unarmed humans to deal meaningful damage on a 1v1 basis, but think about it like this. If one man stomps on the bear's paw or repeatedly kicks a limb before going down, the next guy is going to see that weak spot and hammer at it. Those small repeated hits, yeah, they add up faster than you think. So out of the 100 men team for the relay 1v1s, I see the bear taking out about 2/3 of the roster before it starts to get in deep water and the humans win. But yeah, that's my opinion on it. I'd love to hear what you guys say. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video and comment what y'all think. Thank you for watching.